that I have done a lot of presentations about doing research. Why? Because this seems to be a real challenge for a lot of college students in their first year, because the level of research that often is required in college is a little different than it was in high school. And for English and communication courses, it's particularly specific. And so this one is to provide some additional specificity and description of what I'm talking about when I refer to scholarly sources and credible sources. So here we go. First of all, when I talk about research, and I mentioned this in other places too, but when I talk about research, and I borrow this from the textbook, but from other sources as well, and from my own experience doing my own research, there are two kinds. Either kind has to be relevant, reliable, and credible. So you start with that. But primary research is research that either you or someone else has done firsthand. For example, they've done their own surveys, they've done their own polling, they've done their own interviewing, they have gathered their own data in some fashion. This is not common at this level. The only time I've really done any of that was in graduate school, particularly for a master's degree thesis. Typically in 100 and 200 level courses, you will not be doing your own research. However, you may be using the research done by other people that they have done themselves. The more common kind of research is secondary research, and this is stuff in which someone has compiled, analyzed, interpreted research done by somebody else. So it's usually more than one set of data or more than one type of research combined, analyzed, and interpreted. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about research. Now, going out and finding a credible source to supplement a presentation or a paper or an essay can work as doing research, but it needs to be, at the very least, supplemented by more scholarly research, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, this is where a lot of people get tripped up. When you go out into the vast swampland of the internet, you are going to find a whole bunch of stuff that is neither credible nor scholarly and mostly junk. And so the first thing I want to do is to steer you away from that stuff, which is why I've done a whole other presentation on doing online research. And so you need to spend some time with that presentation and understand the tricks of the trade to identifying what is useful information for our purposes on the internet and what you need to toss away. Essentially, there are two types of sources that are acceptable for this or pretty much any other college course. The first is any source, a credible source. So this can be a newspaper, a news magazine. It can be an encyclopedia. It can be a number of things, but it has to at least have evidence that it has a track record of providing accurate and reliable information. It's transparent about who is behind it, where the money comes from, what their policies are. You know, just because something is a 501c nonprofit doesn't mean it is a good, credible source. They may be full of biases supporting a particular point of view. For example, you may not want to use as your only source for a topic like abortion from Planned Parenthood. Similarly, you may not want to use the NRA as your only source for information about guns and gun rights. You get the point. You can use them so long as you understand how they can be used, and we can talk about that. We will talk about that in other lessons. But be careful about your sources. And I'm begging you, please, do not use history.com. That's a TV show. And a lot of folks have used that in my classes in the past, and I'm now at the point where I'm banning it. And Wikipedia, I have talked about Wikipedia in another lesson. Don't use it. However, there may be sources, references inside a Wikipedia page that might be useful to you. Go to my other lesson on that for more information. When I talk about scholarly sources, I'm talking about things that are peer-reviewed, which means that a scholar, an academic scholar, has written something and then other scholars have reviewed it and determined that it reaches the level of a scholarly source. Does this mean that it is a perfect source? No. Does it mean it is without error? No. But it's what we have to work with. And so when I talk about scholarly sources, the main issue there is it needs to come out of an academic journal of some kind, or at least have been peer reviewed. And the two best places to go for that information is our Google Scholar and JSTOR. And again, I have provided information on how to use the CEI library for JSTOR in another lesson. Here's what I expect for your assignments, and each assignment may be a little different, so read the specifics of the assignment. Some assignments need more resources and references than others, but you will include at least both scholarly and credible sources in an assignment, whether it's a speech or a paper or an essay, and it may be more or less depending on that specific assignment. But understand when I refer to scholarly or credible sources, what they mean, and if you're unsure about one, I'm happy to give it a look for you and give you some advice.